Hey guys and gals, Vlad here with AVT-Astro, and today, as always, I've got an interesting astro topic for you guys. For those of you that might not be familiar, I run a little astro blog called AVT-Astro.com, and of course this YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed, please do consider subscribing. Over the years, I've had the privilege of owning over 100 scopes, more accessories than I could count. And let's get down to the topic of today's video. Have you ever found yourself in this type of situation? You just finished a whole week of imaging on the Veil Nebula, and then this happens. Dun dun dun. The moon is out. Alright guys, so I just made a video on astronomy myths, and one of the myths that I had in the video was that you can't do any observing while the moon is out, or imaging for that matter, right? Well, you can. You can do narrowband imaging if that's what you're into, and you probably already know that. But what about observing? I mean, the deep sky objects do get affected by the moon a lot, so they're not the best to observe, while the moon's out, or if you're under light pollution for that matter. But there's a class of objects that I feel are, pretty overlooked, and that is double stars. So what are double stars? Well, as the name implies, it's usually two stars. It doesn't have to be two stars though. There can be multiple stars as well that are, really close together in your telescope. Now, they can be two physical stars, that are actually orbiting each other, in outer space somewhere. Or they could just be, just so happen to be aligned, right, to where they kind of look like a double. So one could be closer to us, one could be a lot further away. So they, they're just, happen to be aligned the correct way to appear as a double star through, your telescope. Now, if you haven't observed double stars, I know what you're thinking. You're like, Vlad, what are you talking about? It's boring, right? It's just two dots through the scope. Well, kind of in a way it is, but there is a lot more to it, okay? As I said, besides double stars, there's multiple star systems, and what's really cool about doubles is that a lot of times, they're not the same magnitude, so they're not the same brightness through your telescope. So one will be, dimmer, one will be brighter. There's also a lot of color variations in double stars, so they're, it makes them really interesting. It's a, very, kind of rich object set that I feel, again, is kind of overlooked, so I'd really encourage you to check them out. Now, I did want to point out that unlike a lot of objects that you might be observing with your telescope, you actually do not need a very big telescope to observe double stars. Most of them, unless you're like really into the really, dim ones, most of them are actually pretty bright, so all you really probably, so tonight I'm using a 5-inch refractor, all you really need is like a 3-inch, like scope to, to get a decent view of double stars. On most nights of seeing, you could observe them, as close as 2 arc seconds, so that, pretty close. And for that, you really don't need a large telescope to do that. 3-inch will resolve that on most nights of observing for you. So that is one big advantage to observing double stars. Having a little bit bigger telescope is beneficial though, as far as bringing out color though, I will say that. But that's that doesn't mean that you have to have like like a 12-inch or something like a 5 or a 6-inch. Honestly, I feel is kind of an ideal size scope for observing double stars. One thing I will point out is that the atmosphere, the steadiness of the air is very important to double star observing, if you're into observing ones that are really close by. A good measure usually is, kind of like the old thing to where, like if stars look like they're twinkling a lot, usually seen as not as good. But really, just start pointing at a couple of doubles. If they're, if they're pretty wide doubles, it really doesn't matter. Although usually the stars do look a lot better just in general, like from an aesthetical, point of view, when the scene is better. So I do kind of enjoy observing doubles and better seeing, but, it's not a necessity. If the scene's not really good, just don't try to observe double stars that are too close. I'd say like 2 arc seconds or wider is, perfectly fine, on most nights of observing. All right, guys, so now you might be wondering, like, well, how do I know which doubles to observe? Well, the personal thing that I use is this guy here. Sky telescope, double stars for small telescopes. There's over 2,000 doubles in here. I mean, I've been working through this thing for years. I mean, you kind of see some of my notes here. You know, I kind of do just write directly into this book. I mean, bunches and bunches of, you know, like double stars in here. This will keep you, you know, busy unless you're like, you know, super dedicated to observing them. And this will keep you busy probably for like, you know, like a good 5 years minimum. Certainly has kept me busy. So I'll post, honestly, I didn't even check if this book's still in print. Hopefully it is. If it is, I'll post a link to it in the, you know, video notes. Also, I will, you know, to kind of get you started, I will post a list of the top 10 doubles that I really enjoy observing. And most of those, you know, I could find really without like an atlas or anything like that. I just kind of know them, you know, from memory. And here's one of them. So this is a double star in the constellation Cygnus. All right, and here it is in all its glory, Albireo. Now, if you've done any double star observing and you think you might have seen this one, I wouldn't be surprised. This is probably the most famous and most colorful double star in the northern hemisphere. The separation of this one is fairly wide, it's 34.3 arc seconds, which is half an arc minute. It's easily resolvable even in the smallest telescopes. In fact, if you have some steady binoculars that are tripod mounted, that are at least, I'd say, 10x, but preferably 25x, you should be able to resolve it. This double star does reside in our stellar neighborhood. It's about 430 light years away from the sun, so probably in the same spiral arm that we are located in, or the sun is located in, I should say. The primary component of the double is magnitude 3.07 star. That is of goldish color, goldish yellow to my eye, and you know, it kind of shows up in the video, I think. The secondary is a little bit dimmer. It's magnitude 4.67. And as you can see from the video, you know, even on camera, this shows up really well. I will say doubles are one of those objects that actually show up even better optically, you know, looking through an eyepiece than they do on camera. Just much crisper and much better defined. You know, while we're kind of talking about, you know, kind of like the equipment side, you know, I don't mean to sound like an APO snob, an APO snob, but I'm not gonna lie, they are my favorite telescope to observe double stars with. I always find that they just produce very precise orbs of light, you know, for depicting stars. So just, you know, aesthetically very, very well presented stars. Other scopes, you know, if you have an SCT or a DOB, you know, just make sure that they're well cooled, that they're well collimated, and they'll do, you know, a great job as well. But if you do happen to have an APO refractor, that's again, even in a relatively small, personally, that would be my recommended instrument of choice. You know, while we're kind of looking at this guy, a couple of other, you know, quick tips for you if you're kind of just beginning double star observing. Don't be afraid to use high powers, even higher than you'd normally use on other objects. Double stars do very well with high powers, especially if you're trying to resolve, you know, close doubles or doubles that are very uneven magnitudes. High powers in a lot of cases do really help out. Alrighty guys, hopefully you guys found this topic interesting. Again, I do encourage you guys, if you haven't done too much double observing, do check it out. There's plenty of very beautiful doubles. This is, you know, something that'll kind of keep you busy for years if you kind of get into it. Certainly, you know, kind of gets me by those moon-filled nights. So yeah, if you guys have any questions, comments, or anything like that, leave them in the thing below. If you're not subscribed, again, please do consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.